Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda Shagney with Alumni Career Services. I'd like to welcome you today to our monthly Lunch and Learn series, sponsored by UK Staff Senate in partnership this month with our own benefits team and human resources, as well as our UK partners TIAA and SAVI. Watch your inbox for future Lunch and Learns. Today's session is being recorded, and you'll be able to view this recording and past Lunch and Learns at staffsenate.uky.edu/professional development. I'll pop that link into the chat soon. Please note that today we're in webinar mode. If you have questions for our speaker, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen and upvote common questions rather than ask them again. This will allow our speakers to prioritize our most common questions. Chat box is available for comments and networking, but please use Q&A so that we can monitor those questions more easily. For now, toggle the chat box from hosts and panelists to everyone and let us know what department you're logging in from. Next, Richard Amos with the benefits team will introduce our speakers for today. Richard.
Hi, all. Richard Amos here. Good to see you. Glad we have such a great number of people interested in this. I first learned about SAVI in August of 19. In my role, I am on the TIAA Advisory Council, which is kind of like a marketing research arm for them in a way, because they tell us things that they're thinking about, but also we get to tell them as their clients things we'd like to see them improve on and do better. So it goes both ways. But I learned about SAVI in August of 19 by the originator. He's an attorney. He lives in DC, and he saw what was going on with the student debt loan forgiveness program and how this is something that the government provided, but less than 1% of people were actually successfully utilizing it because it's such a difficult and complicated system to manage on your own. So they created this tool, and SAVI has partnered with TIAA, and UK has had some really, really good engagement. We adopted it shortly thereafter because we saw the value in it. So starting in October or so of 2019, we added this as an option for people. And I think there's a slide that you might see. You can see that there's 799 registrations from UK people. So that's pretty good engagement. The premium users are the ones who pay a small fee. It's a very small annual fee. It's $60, I believe, and Lindsay will probably go over that. But the 799, those people, they're going to take advantage of what SAVI provides, but still kind of manage it on their own. Whereas the 149, it automates everything and really makes it easy for people who are leading busy lives. But you see the total debt managed, it's a very impressive number, 35 million. Average amount of forgiveness projected is 38,000. Average savings per month, $81 per month. And total projected forgiveness is 14 million. So you can see this has a really significant potential to relieve individuals' financial stress. So with that intro, I'd like to intro you to Lindsay Clark. Lindsay has been running with this, and her Ian Kuhn is also going to be helping with the presentation. So with no further ado, I'd like to welcome Lindsay and Ian, and thank you all for being here today.
Great. Thank you so much, Richard and Amanda. It's great to be with you all today. Thank you for having us. As Richard mentioned, I'm joined by my colleague, Ian, who's off camera at the moment, but Ian will be busily working away, helping to answer any and all of your questions throughout the webinar. So please feel free to put those in the Q&A box as we go through some of these slides, and we'll try our best to answer them. So if we can go on to the next slide. So I just wanted to take a moment to briefly introduce sort of the partnership and relationship between TIAA, University of Kentucky, and SAVI, and how we sort of came to be here. So SAVI has been working with TIAA for the past couple of years to develop a benefit that is specifically designed for employees such as yourselves who work for public service employers. This benefit is really designed to help borrowers with student debt who are also working for an eligible employer to be able to take advantage of one of the biggest forgiveness programs out there called public service loan forgiveness. And Richard started to talk about this a little bit, but it has been notoriously difficult for borrowers to cross the finish line on this program. And so this benefit is designed to really help you optimize not only your savings, en route to ultimate forgiveness, but to actually cross the finish line and achieve that forgiveness. And so we've been working together and bringing this to the University of Kentucky as a benefit to all of the employees. As employees of University of Kentucky, you are all eligible for this program because University of Kentucky is a qualifying employer. And it's likely that you might have worked at previous qualifying employers, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But ultimately, our goal either way is really to help you achieve the best outcome possible for your student loans. And for most of you, I mean, it would be great, right, if all of that could be totally forgiven. All right, on this next slide, I'm just going to run through a quick look at the agenda that we'll be covering here today. It's going to be a jam-packed hour, and I just want to say up front, it is totally normal to at any point during the next 50 minutes or so feel overwhelmed, confused, and sort of a little bit stressed out about student debt. But I think our goal here today is to help you better understand some of the key concepts around this forgiveness program. And hopefully that should actually help to lighten the load a little bit and sort of help you see what that final outcome will be and how, not necessarily easy, but how clear it will be to achieve that with SAVI's help, if you'd like. So I'm going to briefly sort of talk about some of the major updates going on around student debt. There's a lot changing, and we're going to sort of walk through the most important things you need to know right now. I'm going to do an overview of the public service loan forgiveness program, and most importantly, talk about these big changes that happened last October 2021, which sort of it was a huge overhaul to the program and is going to mean that for many of you, you are now eligible for forgiveness when previously you might not have been. So this was sort of a game changer, and I want to make sure that everyone's aware of what's going on. And then I'm going to take you through the SAVI tool, show you how it works, show you how you can get set up, show you what we offer as far as sort of free and then premium services. And then we're going to spend the rest of the time on Q&A. So with that being said, before we get started and diving into the student debt stuff, just wanted to take a second to introduce you to who we are here at SAVI. I think it's important because there are a lot of scam companies out there, less than reputable actors in this space. And I think it's really important to know, who you want to trust and why you can trust SAVI. So we're a social impact tech startup based in Washington, D.C. We were founded by policy experts and advocates who had been fighting on behalf of the borrower for close to a decade. And in 2017, they saw how many borrowers were rejected when they went to apply for the public service loan forgiveness program and decided to do something about it. And so they developed a technology platform to help borrowers not only better understand their debt, but actually get enrolled in these programs and, like I said, cross that finish line. And so our tool is designed to help you unlock savings and get enrolled in things like income-driven repayment plans, which help to lower your monthly payment and ultimately set you up to be able to take advantage of forgiveness programs like public service loan forgiveness. We are a registered public benefit corporation, which means it's in our mission and charter to serve the public benefit. And that's why we do things like this here today. And pretty much on a daily basis, Ian and I are hosting educational workshops for a variety of our partners and borrowers out there, a lot of them that are eligible for these programs so that they can better understand their debt and that we can be able to help them achieve the best outcome possible. So enough about us. We're going to get into the good stuff here and start talking about some of the most important sort of things going on in the student loan world right now. Okay, so whether or not you've been following along in the news, I will say this: I'm a borrower myself. I have a little over $200,000 in student loan debt between my undergrad and grad careers. So hopefully that might make some of you feel better about your own situation if you have less debt. In which case, mission accomplished right off the bat. But I say this because as a borrower, I very much have an attitude of out of sight, out of mind with my student loans. I procrastinate around them and prefer not to think about them. And I know that that's pretty common amongst borrowers. So when I say, if you've been following this in the news, I understand that you might be hearing things here and there, but generally student debt might not be the topic that you're most interested, for a variety of reasons. So that's why I wanted to take a second here to really make sure that you understood some of the things that were going on, because I guarantee that they are impacting you and will impact you. And so it's important to just be aware and understand mostly how you can benefit from them. So first and foremost, the big headline here is that at the end of last year, the payment pause on federal student loans was extended through May 1st of 2022, this year. All right. So this payment pause, which went into effect back in March of 2020 under the CARES Act. Okay. So payment pause, all federally held student loans, the payments were paused and interest was waived starting in March of 2020. Now, this has since been extended several times over the course of the past 2 years. Loans were originally supposed to come back into repayment as of January 31st of this year. But at the end of last year, they decided to push that extension out. And so as of right now, the loan pause has been extended through May 1st of this year, meaning that for the majority of borrowers out there, payments are scheduled to resume soon thereafter. All right. Now, whether or not that payment pause could be extended again is up in the air, and we, will likely know as soon as we're told by the Department of Education and they make, some type of announcement about it. But as of right now, you should plan on payments resuming, basically May 2nd. So what that means is that borrowers, from March of 2020 through May, of 2022, haven't had to make a payment for 2 years. And I mean, I will say it's been great. I've almost forgotten about my student loans entirely, which is to say it's going to be making it even more challenging for borrowers to get back into repayment, right? We've all gotten comfortable not having to make those payments for 2 years. So it's great that we're doing this now and you're sort of able to understand these options and get sort of set up and on track. That way, it's going to be a far smoother transition for you back into repayment. Okay, now this payment pause period, all right, this March of 2020 through May 1st of 2022, about 26 months total. Okay, this payment pause period can be potentially very valuable for someone who is trying to pursue public service loan forgiveness, because each of these months that payments were paused, okay, each one of these 26 months total, borrowers who are trying to pursue public service loan forgiveness, if they were working full-time for a qualifying employer, okay, they're able to receive qualifying payment credit for each of these payment pause months, each one of these 26 months, meaning basically for free, for having to make no payment at all, they will be 26 credits closer to the total 120 they need to achieve full forgiveness. That's basically 2 years out of the 10 years total needed to achieve forgiveness without having had to have made a payment at all. Now, I emphasize this because there's a lot of confusion and misinformation out there about sort of how this is working and eligibility. And so I wanted to clarify, because many borrowers have been under the assumption that in order to remain eligible for public service loan forgiveness, they needed to continue making payments during this payment pause. And to that, I say you can actually have those payments refunded to you because that's not the case. You didn't need to make payments. You should take advantage of this payment pause. And for each month that your payments were paused, you're able to receive a credit just as if you made a payment. So this is a huge sort of, valuable, sort of asset for borrowers who are trying to pursue public service loan forgiveness. You've got basically 26 free PSLF credits in your pocket. Okay, moving on to servicer transitions. And this is one that's going to impact a lot of people if it hasn't already. So over the last, I would say, 6 to 8 months, 3 of the biggest federal servicers out there, FedLoan, Navient, and Granite State, have all announced that they are basically not renewing their federal contracts and getting out of the student loan game. All right, which means that for borrowers whose loans are serviced by those companies, they will be transferred to new servicers. So that's about 16 million borrowers total who had their loans, serviced by one of those 3 companies, and that will be moving and be transferred to a new servicer. Now, these transfers started basically, I would say about October, November of last year, 2021. And it's going to take pretty much all the way through this year, 2022, for these transfers to be complete. So you could be transferred at any point in time, during this sort of, year-long period to a new servicer. You're not really given sort of a heads up or advance notice. Now, it's causing mass confusion for a lot of borrowers because the payment pause has made it so that borrowers sort of haven't really logged into their servicer accounts in a while. And now they're getting prompted to create a new servicer account. There are a lot of scam companies out there. You should be suspicious of getting calls that you don't recognize or messages from companies, talking about, loans and forgiveness that you don't recognize. But borrowers are basically having to deal with this transition right in the middle of when they're also having to come back online into repayment in May. So it's sort of like a perfect storm here as far as, a lot going on at the same time. And unfortunately, the borrower, usually ends up being the one who's negatively impacted because they either aren't paying attention to communications or, aren't able to set things up on time. So if you have loans that were serviced by Navient, Granite State, or FedLoan, a few pieces of advice for you if your loans haven't transferred already that you should make sure to take. First and foremost, make sure that your contact information is fully updated. That way, when and if these communications go out, letting you know your loans are going to be transferred, that you'll be able to receive those easily. And then the second piece of sort of helpful advice here is that you should download a copy of your payment history or any statements from your servicing account and save those somewhere, for your posterity before your loans transfer. Because once your loans transfer, you will no longer have access to that, let's say, Navient account. And one of the crucial parts of the public service loan forgiveness process is basically going back and looking at your payment history. And for anyone maybe out there who's had any experience with the public service loan forgiveness program, one of the biggest pain points is that these servicers don't count your payment history correctly. They often make mistakes. And so when it comes to basically, sort of trying to prove that you made payments, you'll look back to your payment history that you download from your servicing account. So it's just good to have that on file and saved just in case you need it, but a sort of record of your payment history with that servicer. All right. Okay. Last but not least, and we're going to sort of talk more about this in a second here, the PSLF limited waiver. So back in October of last year, the Department of Education came out with a huge announcement around the public service loan forgiveness program, and basically, made a series of announcements in which they are calling the PSLF limited waiver. Now, this limited waiver, it's not a physical thing, no physical waiver. It's representative of a period of time between this past October and this upcoming October 31st, 2022. So this year-long period during which borrowers have the ability to receive credit for payments made retroactively that they would otherwise not have received credit for. It's basically overhauling the eligibility requirements and expanding them tremendously. So now more people are eligible to be able to take advantage of the program, but also are eligible to have their years of service and payment counted. So we're going to go into more detail on that in a second, because like I said, it's going to impact most people out there, and you would need to take action in order to be able to benefit from that before October 31st of this year. So I'm going to tell you exactly what you need to know and how to do that in order to get set up. Okay. Any questions? Or I think Ian might be handling those in the Q&A. Okay, good. We'll continue rolling. All right. So when it comes to public service loan forgiveness and this limited waiver, I think it's helpful to first start back at the beginning and orient everyone around the original public service loan forgiveness program and requirements. That way it'll sort of make sense as to what's been changed and expanded from there. So sort of a refresher on public service loan forgiveness, or PSLF. PSLF is essentially full forgiveness on the remainder of your loan balance, whatever that may be, $5,000, $500,000, it doesn't matter, tax-free after you have made 120 qualifying payments. And I say that in air quotes because the devil's really in the details here as to exactly what a qualifying payment is. And that's what I'm going to sort of walk you through here in a second. Now, as far as these 120 payments goes, a few things there. They do not need to be consecutive. They just need to be cumulative. So I'll repeat that. They don't need to be 120 consecutive. They just need to be cumulative. All right. So for example, let's say you worked at UKY for 2 years and accumulated 24 PSLF credits, 12 credits per year. And then you went and worked in the private sector for a couple of years. Nothing happens to those credits. They simply pause. And then if you were to ever resume your eligibility by working again at a qualifying employer, you could resume accumulating those credits. So many people think of this program as a 10-year program, but that is in fact just the earliest you could achieve it, okay, if you were making those payments consecutively, but that's not required, all right? So it's again, not consecutive, just cumulative. Also, you can only receive 1 credit per 1 month per 1 payment. So you can't double up on payments in a month and get 2 credits for that month. All right, so you get 1 credit per month, 12 credits per year. The earliest you can get this is in 10 years, okay? You can't get it any sooner than that, all right? So that's sort of how the reaching 120 works. Now, as far as what constitutes a qualifying payment, okay, you need to make 120 of these qualifying payments, it's 3 things. Number 1, you need to work for a qualifying employer. That's any government organization at any level, federal, state, local, or tribal, or any non-for-profit 501c3. As an employee of University of Kentucky, you are currently working for an eligible employer. The only stipulation here is that you must work a minimum of 30 hours a week or more, okay, in order to be eligible. All right, so qualifying employer, that's usually the easiest one for most people to figure out. Oftentimes I would say people are unaware that they even work for an eligible employer. So there are far more out there than people are aware. And like I said, you might have previously worked for a qualifying employer. And the good news about this program is that it's retroactive. So any employment from October 2007 to present is fair game. October 2007 is when the program started. All right, so nothing before that is relevant. So basically October 2007 to present. Okay, so number 1, your qualifying employer. Number 2, you had to have a qualifying loan type. And the only loan type that qualified was a direct federal loan. All right, if you had an older type of loan known as a FFEL loan, FFEL loan, which stands for Federal Family Education Loan, this was the loan program in existence prior to 2010. I have a few of these myself. If you had that type of loan, you needed to consolidate that loan into a direct loan in order for it to be eligible. And only after the point of consolidation, okay, only after it became a direct loan, were you able to start accumulating qualifying payment credits towards the 120. So what we saw happen across the board was borrowers who had these FFEL loans, had been working in public service, making payments, went to apply for the program, and were rejected because they were told they have a FFEL loan that's not eligible. They need to consolidate into a direct loan and then start over at 0, basically, and make another 120 qualifying payments because they were told none of their payments before were eligible to count. All right. So like I said, these are the rules under the original program. And in a second, we're going to talk about how this limited waiver has expanded that eligibility so that borrowers in that situation are able to now benefit. Okay, oops, can we go back a second? Thanks. Okay, so 1, your employer, 2, your loan type, you needed to have a direct loan, and 3, your repayment plan. You need to be making payments on an income-driven repayment plan. There are about 3 or 4 different types of income-driven repayment plans. Doesn't matter which one, it just had to be on one of those. So you needed to achieve all 3 of these things simultaneously and make 120 payments while you had achieved all 3 of those things. So let's say, for example, you worked for University of Kentucky, but you didn't make a payment. That wouldn't count. Let's say you were making payments on an income-driven repayment plan, but you were unemployed. That wouldn't count, right? So you need all 3 at the same time in order for it to be qualifying and make 120. Now, what this resulted in, Ian, if we can go to the next screen, is in 2017. So the program started in 2007. 10 years later was 2017, was the first basically year that borrowers were eligible to start applying. And we saw that first wave come in. About 100,000 people applied in 2017, and less than 1% were accepted into the program. Okay, and the reasons being were these technicalities that you see right here. They were rejected because they were in the wrong repayment plan. They didn't have the right type of loan. They had their employment certifications denied for reasons that weren't that weren't sort of accurate. Many might have made late payments, or they had their payments lost when things were transferred for a variety of reasons, but primarily the fact that these technicalities like loan type and repayment plan that borrowers were totally unaware of around the program requirements basically made them ineligible. So after 10 years of thinking they're working in public service, paying on their loans and thinking they're going to have them forgiven, we're basically told they'd need to start over or were outright rejected. And this was massively frustrating for many people. And pretty much from 2017 up until the fall of last year, the public service loan forgiveness program has been a point of huge contention here in DC because of how tough it was for borrowers to actually achieve success. The promise of the program was that if you work in public service for 10 years, you can have your loans forgiven. That's it. Not these technicalities like this that were preventing borrowers who should have been receiving forgiveness, who were deserving public servants like yourselves, from actually getting their loans forgiven. So after a lot of effort from the advocacy community in pushing on the Department of Education and the White House in October of 2021, last year, they came out with this PSLF waiver announcement. Ian, if we can go to the next screen. Okay, so here is sort of an overview of the sort of expanded eligibility requirements as a result of this PSLF limited waiver announcement. All right. And I've sort of oriented them around those 3 same categories to make it easier to sort of understand. So first and foremost, let's talk qualifying employer. Not much has changed there. You still need to work for a government organization, at any level, or a non-for-profit 501c3. And you still need to work a minimum of 30 hours a week. However, the one thing that has changed is that you can now apply for the program while being retired, or I should say, you no longer need to be employed when you apply for the program. And I'll explain a little bit here. Under the original rules of PSLF, when you wanted to submit an application, when you'd reached 120 payments and you wanted to submit that final application for forgiveness, you needed to still be employed at that qualifying employer at the time you submitted your application, and up until basically the time it was approved and your loans were actually forgiven. Okay, you needed to remain employed at that eligible institution. Now, that doesn't sound so bad, right? But what you're seeing is that the processing time for these applications was sometimes taking anywhere between 6 to 9 to over a year to process. And these oftentimes were people who were basically holding up their retirement because they were waiting to have these loans forgiven, but had no idea that it was going to take that long for the Fed loan servicer to process their application. So under this new PSLF waiver, you don't need to remain employed in order to apply for the program. And what that looks like in real life, and I'll give you an example here of a borrower I was working with the other day who was a school teacher in Los Angeles, retired in 2019 and had about $70,000 in student loan debt when she retired, and was basically resigned to bringing that to her grave. She had applied for public service loan forgiveness, about 5 years earlier, and was rejected because she was not on the right repayment plan. All right, one of those technicalities. Well, now under this PSLF waiver, okay, even though she is retired, she is able to actually receive full forgiveness on that $70,000 in student loans without making another payment, because of the changes I'm about to tell you in a second here. But because she's made 120 payments, and now under the new rules, she is eligible. And so she simply needs to submit that final application and she's getting full forgiveness. And this is a borrower who was pretty resigned to the fact that, she was going to be stuck with these forever, and had retired, several years, prior. So if you know anyone, I say this because you are all employed now, but, or are at the point of retirement or thinking about it, this is definitely going to be a game changer, for those borrowers. All right, so qualifying employer, again, like I said, largely still the same. Qualifying loan type, however, has completely expanded. So originally, right, you could only have a direct federal loan to be eligible. Now they are including FFEL loans, which means, all right, if you have that FFEL loan, you still need to consolidate that loan in order to make it eligible. However, payments you made prior to that consolidation while it was a FFEL loan are eligible to count towards the 120 you need. Okay, so basically, regardless of what loan type you had, if you made a payment on that loan anywhere from October 2007 to present, that can be counted as a qualifying payment credit, so long as you are working for a qualifying employer. All right. Now, I'm just curious, maybe by a show or raise of hands, how many of you out there have Parent Plus loans? Maybe we don't have too many. Okay, then maybe I will skip going into heavy detail there. I don't think they can raise their hands. Oh, they might not be able to raise their hands. Okay, sorry about that, guys. So I'll briefly talk about Parent Plus loans in relation to public service loan forgiveness. So Parent Plus loans are loans taken out by a parent on behalf of a child, but in the parent's name. Okay. And so therefore, when it comes to public service loan forgiveness, because they're in the parent's name, they are potentially eligible for forgiveness, okay, but it'd be based on the parent's employment, right? And they would need to be consolidated, okay, first. So regardless of anything, if you have a Parent Plus loan and you want to try to pursue public service loan forgiveness, you need to consolidate that loan. Now, Parent Plus loans were not included in this PSLF waiver, which means that you can still be eligible for the program, okay? You need to consolidate first, but only payments made after consolidation are eligible to count. What I mean by that they are not included in this waiver is that they didn't expand it to include payments made prior to consolidation, all right? Which stinks. And I will tell you all this, or for those of you who have those Parent Plus loans, there's a strong advocacy push here in DC to include Parent Plus loans in sort of the next round of, public service loan forgiveness policy, expansion and improvement. So, I would say stay tuned because things could change in the future. But as of right now, if you have a Parent Plus loan, like I said, you need to consolidate that loan, and then you'd only be able to start accumulating credits after the point of consolidation. But FFEL loans, FFEL, those federal family education loans, or it can be FFELP, that just means P for program. Those loans are basically the crux of this limited waiver. They're included. All right, so they are eligible under this. Okay, so you've got your qualifying employer, your qualifying loan type. Right now, it doesn't matter if you had direct or FFEL, they can both be counted. Last but not least, your repayment plan. You no longer need to be on an income-driven repayment plan. you can receive a qualifying credit for any of the payment plans out there, standard plan, extended graduated, whatever it may be. It just you need to have been in repayment status, okay? And in repayment status means that your loans were in repayment, you were making that payment. Now, in addition to not only expanding the types of repayment plans eligible, the Department of Education actually has said, they're willing to count previous payments that weren't necessarily made for the on-time amount or for the full amount. So that's why you see here, on time-ish and in full-ish. They're pretty vague about it on the Department of Education website. And so, many borrowers are able now to, though, have additional payments counted that weren't quite for the sort of on-time and full amount. So in summary, all right, basically, if you have been working for a qualifying employer, okay, from anywhere from October 2007 to present, all right, doesn't need to be for the entirety of that time, but any period in which you were employed by a qualifying employer, and during that period you were employed, you were making a payment on your loan, okay, regardless of what loan type you had and regardless of what repayment plan, those periods are now eligible to count, all right? And what that means is, and I'm going to show you on this next slide, and if we can go to that one, what that's meant for borrowers, or what that's resulted in, is a few different things. And I'll say that one more time again, because I think I'm trying to sort of really break it down to make it very, very clear as to sort of what this waiver actually means. Because I know that a lot of times it creates more questions than answers. And PSLF was confusing to begin with. Now we, sort of try to expand it, and borrowers are even more confused. So, Ian, if we can actually go back to the previous screens. Sorry, okay, so basically, if you have anywhere from October 2007 to present, right? That's the sort of the eligible time frame we're working here, because that's when the program started. All right. Now, anywhere in that period that you were full-time working, 30 hours or more for a qualifying employer, okay? And while you were working for a qualifying employer, you were making payments on your loan, okay? Each one of those payments that you made is eligible now, regardless of what loan type you had. You could have had direct or FFEL, and regardless of what repayment plan you were on, okay, like how you were repaying that loan. If that was a payment and you were working for a qualifying employer, that is now eligible to count towards the 120 you need, okay? So Ian, on this next slide, I'm gonna show sort of walk you through what that sort of has resulted in and what that's looked like. So for many borrowers, okay, when this news broke and they expanded this eligibility, that meant that they were eligible to receive automatic, immediate full forgiveness. And the Department of Education was able to determine this because they had already been tracking towards the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, and basically had record of payments that were deemed previously ineligible that were now able to easily make eligible, and that put them at the 120 and forgiveness like that. So about 20,000 or so public service workers received immediate automatic forgiveness back last fall. And then this sort of next wave of about 27,000 or so needed to just certify one additional period of employment, but was going to be then eligible to receive their full forgiveness. They would have reached their 120. And the average forgiveness for those borrowers was about $100,000 per borrower. And then there's sort of this next phase of about 500,000 borrowers who are basically eligible to receive, because of the expanded eligibility, right now that payments previously deemed ineligible are now eligible. The average borrower is getting about 2 years of additional credit towards public service loan forgiveness, right? And that's just the average. What we're seeing here is basically borrowers who thought they had to start back at zero and maybe were 2 years into making payments again, are now able to count their previous payment history, and they're at 120, and now they don't have to make another payment ever again. So for many people who had that significant payment history that was ineligible first time around, it is a game changer because they basically are going from rejection to immediate and full forgiveness eligibility. And then I would say there is this sort of bigger, broader group of borrowers out there who are eligible for the program based on the fact that they are working for a qualifying employer, but have never submitted any form or documentation for public service loan forgiveness yet, okay? And that's totally fine and normal. But that is the majority of borrowers. Now, just because they haven't submitted any form yet doesn't mean that they're not going to be eligible to take advantage of this. However, what's most important here is that in order for them to take advantage of this expanded eligibility during this period of time, they only got a year to do it, from last October to October 31st this year, they have to take certain action in order to get basically, enrolled in the program and be eligible to have all of their payment sort of history counted. Because there are definitely people sitting out there right now who have made 120 payments on their loans, been working public service, for 10 plus years, but just haven't submitted the form yet. But once they do, they're eligible for full forgiveness. And so that's why for me, it's just so important to make sure people are aware of this. We just recently did a national survey of 40,000 student loan borrowers, and close to 30% had no idea about this waiver. And so it kills me that there are people, sitting out there who are eligible to have all of their loans forgiven right now under these changes, but are simply unaware. So the big thing that I want to reiterate, and we're going to transition to talk about the SAVI tool here in a second and how we can help with this process, but that it's really two things, okay, to think about as far as what you would need to do in order to take advantage of this. First and foremost, if you have an older FFEL loan, okay, you would need to consolidate it, okay, regardless, before you do anything else, you first need to consolidate it. Once you consolidate it, you can then submit an employment certification form, okay? This is something that SAVI helps manage for all of our borrowers, and I'm gonna talk about that in a second. But that employment certification form is the one and only form for PSLF, okay? It's the application you submit when you reach 120. It's the form you can submit on a yearly basis to sort of track and certify your employment in progress. And it's the form you submit to sort of initiate you being enrolled and tracked towards public service loan forgiveness. All right, it's called the employment certification form. It gets signed off by you, the borrower, and it gets signed off by your HR. And what's great is, our relationship with UKY means that we have that contact already lined up, those forms already digitized, and we handle that whole process for you, not only with your current employer, UKY, but any previous employers you might have had. And like I said, I'm going to show you how that works in the tool in a second. But I just want to, quickly sort of recap here. So next steps for borrowers trying to take advantage of this: if you have a FFEL loan, consolidate, and then you submit this employment certification form for current and previous employers. And otherwise, if you don't have FFEL loans and you have direct loans, and you simply want to figure out, how you can, to see if you're able to get additional credits, submitting that employment certification form. That's it for any and all periods of employment from October 2007 to present. It's just that one form. It gets submitted to Fed Loan Servicing, okay? And they are the sole servicer that manages public service loan forgiveness. Submitted to Fed Loan, and then they review, and you sort of get tracked in from there. So, Ian, if we can maybe move on to the next screen. I know I've got it. Okay, so really briefly here, I know that was probably a lot, but just want to sort of underscore that, at least from my perspective, and I've been traveling around the country giving workshops and talking about this, for the last 4 or 5 years, the changes that I just reviewed with you all are going to be huge for borrowers, so long as they are aware and able to submit this documentation. And so that's really where we come in as SAVI. We basically are able to help you understand not only your eligibility around forgiveness, but other things like repayment as well, because not everyone's going to be eligible for immediate full forgiveness right now, right? You might still be, a few years into the process, or maybe you got a little bit closer, but you're somewhere in that 10-year span. And so you're going to have to resume payments, and we help to get you set up with that. But then if you want to engage us in sort of our premium level services, we actually take on all of that administrative burden for you. which means we pre-fill the forms, we get them signed off by various HR, and then we submit them on your behalf to FedLoan. And then we monitor them to make sure that FedLoan's processing them, accurately, which doesn't always happen, and in a timely manner, which also doesn't often happen, and that you are actually getting the credits that you are eligible for. And so, that's a huge part of our essential premium offering, where we sort of do all that work for you, in addition to being able to access, sort of one-on-one personalized support with student loan experts. So all of this combines to be able to help borrowers like yourselves. In many ways, you can use our tool for free and basically see your options around repayment and understand your forgiveness eligibility. And then you basically have the decision. It's up to you whether or not you want to do that on your own. It's called DIY, and Ian will talk about that in a second. Or whether you want us to do it for you. It's sort of like a TurboTax, you can do it for free or pay to have it done. Our goal and what we do for borrowers is ensure that they cross that finish line. And we do whatever we need to make sure that that happens. So I hope that was sort of a helpful overview of what's going on. I know it is, confusing and overwhelming, but again, that's why we're introducing you to SAVI, so that from here, you can work with our team in our program and benefit from our services. So at this point, I'm going to actually transition over to Ian, who's going to take you through the SAVI tool and show you sort of how to get set up and the various DIY versus essential options there, and then take any questions. All right.
Okay, sorry everyone, I needed to leave the room so there's no echo with Lindsay. We are so excited to work together, and like Lindsay said, these are some of the wonderful benefits of working with SAVI. And I'll show you how, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions as well afterwards. So once you get logged into the SAVI service, after everything that Lindsay has run through, all these great rules, resources, and new learnings, this is how to actually tangibly make it happen. So logging in at tiaa.org/UK/student will get you started and set up here. I'm going to go ahead and put that in the chat really quick, just so that you have it and can bookmark it to come back to. Once you get logged in to your free account that is available to everyone, you'll land on the student loan dashboard. So I think of this as like our central hub for everything student loans. You can see there's a lot of resources here as well that we are going to run through. This I referenced to a couple people in the Q&A, so you'll be able to see the whole process of your student loans. So you can see here when your next upcoming dates would be, how many credits you have. So when I was saying, certified credits, as Lindsay was talking about submitting forms during this special period, that would be how to see that. So if we at SAVI say, we know that you've worked for 10 years at UKY, and we just need to submit them, that's our projection. And then once we get them certified with FedLoan, they would pop up as certified at that point. This is how through that whole, 10-year plus process, you're able to see your progress the whole way through and always know where you're at in that journey, rather than having to fax in documents and be in that kind of, as we call it, application abyss of just not knowing where things are at along the way. So you're always able to see that, know if we need to sign something from you, if we're waiting on, HR, FedLoan has the paperwork. You see that every step of the way. It takes all the guesswork out of it. You're also able to sign up for future webinars. I know we had an hour together, but it just goes by so quick. So if you have other questions or know other people that should have been here to attend one, you can sign up for future webinars there. But otherwise, you're welcome to go ahead and hit the big continue or start application button. And this is what runs you through the questionnaire. So this is how we get enough information to make that recommendation to say, you might be eligible for forgiveness now, or you only have, a couple years left, or you could be saving X amount of dollars per month. This is where all that kind of intel comes from. It might look really familiar to other like online tax prep software, asking some questions. It gives you your live estimate as you go through and then tells you what your best option is at the end. So everything in here is designed to save you money and maximize your forgiveness. Even questions like how many dependents you have is important because on income-driven repayment plans, that's an extra $50 per month that you don't need to make on a payment for every dependent you have. You're also able here, I know some questions had come up on filing jointly or single for IDR payments. You're welcome to also, play with this. It's a live calculator. So if you go from single to married to head of household, by toggling these switches, your estimated payment will change live in the corner. So you can see maybe what's best for your situation to how to file that. The next one here is income. So just, putting in that income, it would not even let you put a decimal point if you wanted to. So there's no need to go digging through the filing cabinet to find that exact amount. And then next is a very important piece here. This is that employment history. So when Lindsay was talking about being able to go retroactive to 2007, this is so important to plug that information in. So even if it was, I know in the chat, there were some people that worked at university, went back to school and then work at the university again. Putting those time periods in are so important so that we know how to match that with your loans. So if you think of them as kind of parallel tracks on a timeline field, when they intersect is what we need to be adding up. So we often tell people to even put employers that you think may not be eligible, right? If a school is a private school, they may actually be coded as a nonprofit organization, even though, the branding is private, liberal arts university that may not feel eligible, but actually is, and vice versa. So definitely put in all of those employers since 2007, and you might be a little surprised. It sounds like there's a lot of people here that may be able to see this screen too, of having immediate forgiveness. This is super exciting. So if you've worked for more than 10 years at an eligible institution, you'll see this, and we'll just need to get a couple more details, file some paperwork, and hopefully get that forgiveness sooner than later. You may also see other options of like pending forgiveness, or, you're so close to getting this, like, let's keep working together. All sorts of different messages there, but this is, kind of the holy grail that we'd be hoping for, is that immediate forgiveness. The last big step here, as you can see, we've only gone through a couple clicks and are almost done, is syncing your loans. This is the second, I would say, most important piece here. Like I said, besides employment and those loans, having to match them up, that's what the tool does really well, is being able to do this digitally. So you can log into your servicer account. So some of these logos, might look familiar: FedLoan, Mohila, Navient, etc. Logging in there, it gives us a secure, safe, read-only snapshot of your loans. So that's how we can see, you've made payments for 20 years and could be eligible for that forgiveness. This is how we know that without having to, plug and play and type in all the details there. So at that point, it gives us the best options for you. So you can see there's 4 eligible plans, but this is the one that it's highlighted in this example that is the best option. So we've reduced our monthly payment by $217 using an income-driven plan. Over the 6 years that we have left to pay off those loans, we had 4 years of forgiveness added up already. That's $12,000 less that we're saving, or $12,000 more, excuse me. And then we add in that interest for this example, it's about $15,000 that's going to get wiped away at the end of the journey. So if that's something that you're thinking, this is great, I'm going to go ahead and file and do that. That's when you can hit, continue here. You're welcome to see the other options based on maybe different objectives you have of wanting to just pay it off sooner than later. That is there. We don't want to pigeonhole anyone into one plan, but this is the one that's highlighted best in this example. At this point, this is also where Lindsay was referencing the different plan options. You're able to do this all on your own, download those forms, be able to fax them in, fill them out yourselves, and do that. Totally an option available to you. Doing it essential is that $60 per year cost. And you would be able to do it all digitally. That's when you can see where your application is at in the process on that dashboard in a couple screens ago that I shared. It's also how you'll be able to have that personalized support from our team of experts. So if you're thinking, the tool tells me I have 2 years left to pay, but I've been working here since 2008. Like that doesn't sound right to me. It's not quite adding up. And you want someone to double check that on your account. The essential plan would be great for that, to have that one-on-one, personal support, to have someone to do that and have a human eye on it. Another example here too, that a lot of people have had, sorry, I'm skipping slides, have had come up is with these new changes. Last October, they've had, got their automatic email from the Department of Ed that said, hey, we're going to give you 2 more years of forgiveness credit, towards this journey of 120. And you're thinking, okay, that's great. Thank you so much. But still, it just doesn't sound like enough. You're like, I was in this plan for 5 years. Like, why am I only getting 2? You're welcome to, like I said, again, have some second set of eyes on that. So with that essential feature, you can hit contact an expert. It was on every page, of the website of the tool, and hit this PSLF waiver review. And that's how you'll be able to schedule time with us to go through it one by one, kind of line by line. And we can say, yeah, that doesn't add up. Let's submit a discrepancy. Let's submit this paperwork again. Or like Lindsay also said, we might be able to see and say, oh, it looks like they don't have, the years 2008 to 2010 on file. And that's the missing, discrepancy. We just need to file 3 more years and you'll be good to go. So being able to check that one-on-one is another great benefit of that essential feature. All right, where are we at with time? We have a couple minutes left. I prepared a couple questions that usually come up with webinars here. So we'll run through those and then see if there's any themes in the Q&A as well from y'all. Do we know what will happen after this October 31st deadline when these rules are set to expire? We don't know quite yet. That October 31st deadline, while maybe feels arbitrary to have just 1 year to retroactively fix this kind of PSLF nightmare that many people have been living through, that there is some legality with COVID administration that they had only been able to do it for 1 year through that point. The department's going through negotiated rulemaking, which is a term for determining new policies at a department administrative level. A lot of these changes may make it through that process that may kind of solidify and cement some of these new, more inclusive and liberal rules, but we don't know for certain yet. So we are still acting that we do need to do a lot of this before Halloween of this year. So, getting those years certified, getting that progress made. We've talked about this a little bit too with Parent Plus loans. Parent Plus loans are eligible for these changes, but would need to be consolidated. So consolidating a Parent Plus loan on its own would not save any of that, credit from before. But if we consolidate Parent Plus loans with other loans, so say you have, your own direct loan and a Parent Plus loan, or a FFEL loan and a Parent Plus loan, consolidating them both together would keep that progress on that Parent Plus loan. That is the same way, I know we're going back and forth a little bit in the Q&A with some people as well that had, undergrad loans and we're going to take out grad loans. When you're done with that grad program, for example, you could consolidate both of those loans together and it would keep the historical credit, the timeline of the undergrad loan that you've had longer and is inevitably closer to, 10 years of forgiveness. It would keep that timeline and just, pull it in, rope it in. And the same would happen with those Parent Plus loans. So that would be the one, kind of loophole that is really helpful for Parent Plus loans in these current rules as well. Can I trust the new count of credits from the Department of Education? They are only able to count what they know. So as Lindsay was talking about those 550,000 borrowers that are getting, 2 years or so of on average more credits, that is only what they know. So if you haven't filed forms with the Department of Ed in a long time, they may not have the right information to be able to retroactively, apply that. If you've never filed with the Department of Ed, they definitely don't know. And you would not be included in that count, and you need to do so and submit those documents that way. All right, and then my last question here before we go through, and happy to stay on Lindsay had to run, but I do not. So we can go through that Q&A as needed. But this last question we get a lot is, I've been in public service for over 10 years and I think I should be eligible. What should I do? I definitely would recommend in this case, running through all your numbers through the SAVI service, being able to, like I said, match up those timelines. Sometimes even though you've worked for 10 years, had been in deferments or had those payments paused, went back to school, etc. Just life happens. So definitely want to make sure and double check that we're good to go with what is eligible in those timelines. And then it will recommend and say, we need to consolidate, or we're missing this form from this date. The tool will do all of that for you and let you know.
Hey, Ian, thank you so much. Are you able to hang out for a few minutes and help with Q&A that came in on the chat? Or
Yes.
not through the Q&A feature? For those that have to log off, we completely understand. If you have a 1 o'clock and need to shimmy, we understand. Ian and I are going to hang out and leave the webinar open so he can get to some of these questions. I'm hoping that I'm able to download the Q&A and post it with the recording. But on behalf of Staff Senate, we're so grateful for you all joining in. For now, I think we'll just go ahead and stop the share, and I'll play some music while we're working on the Q&A. We'll be off camera, and then you'll see the webinar close after we wrap those up. Does that sound okay, Ian?
Great, yeah.
Okay, thanks you all so much for joining and logging in. On behalf of Staff Senate, we appreciate you so much.